Before Sophie Lane's murder shook the town, there was another tragedy, one that had long been buried. Emma Carter was 19 when she died. At least, that's what everyone believed. On a sad night 5 years ago, her body was pulled from a fire just outside of town. The scene was chaotic. Paramedics swarmed. Police secured the area, and bystanders whispered about what could happen to bright, ambitious young woman, traces of a powerful sedative found in her system. The official report suggested an overdose, a tragic accident, or worse, a suicide. Her younger brother, Adam Carter, never believed it. Neither did Detective Evelyn Ross. But the case was quickly closed. The lead investigator, Richard Lane, he declared it an open-and-shut case within days, dismissing Adam's protests and ignoring the inconsistencies. Emma's body was never formally identified by her family, only by Richard himself. The town moved on, until Sophie Lane's murder, 5 years later, unearthed the ghosts of the past. And now, those ghosts were clawing their way back to the surface. Detective Ross couldn't shake the feeling that Emma Carter's case and Sophie Lane's murder were connected. The similarities were chilling. The forensic report from Elena Foster's hospital room confirmed it. The same sedative used on her was the one found in Emma Carter's system 5 years ago. That wasn't a coincidence. Ross pulled up Emma's old case file. As she read through Richard Lane's report, her unease grew. There were gaps in the timeline, missing details, contradictions. And then, something even more disturbing. Someone had accessed Emma's file recently. Who was trying to rewrite history? And more importantly, why? She dug deeper, tracing digital footprints left behind in the precinct system. It led her to an encrypted archive of closed cases, all of them tied to Richard Lane, and buried within it a surveillance image from 2 years ago. The timestamp was clear. The location was a busy street in a neighboring city. The image was grainy, but the face? It was unmistakable. Emma Carter. Alive. Ross's blood ran cold. If Emma was alive 2 years ago, where was she now? She called Hayes, her partner, and within minutes, they were combing through financial records, searching for any trace of Emma. They found something. A series of offshore accounts, all created under aliases, all linked to transactions in the last 6 months. Emma Carter wasn't just alive. She was active. And then her phone buzzed. A new message. You're looking in the wrong places. Detective, try looking up. It was sent from an untraceable number. But Ross had learned one thing. Whoever was behind this wanted her to find the truth. Or at least, the version of it they were ready to reveal. The clue led Ross and Hayes to an abandoned high-rise on the outskirts of town. The building had been empty for years, a forgotten relic of a failed development project. But the top floor? Someone had been using it. They moved cautiously, weapons drawn, as they approached the penthouse. The door was slightly ajar, a soft glow flickering from within. Ross's pulse pounded as she stepped inside. And there, standing in the center of the room, was Emma Carter, very much alive. She wasn't the frightened girl Ross had expected to find. She was composed, controlled. The sharp angles of her face were illuminated by the city lights spilling through the massive windows. Her dark blue eyes, eerily similar to Adam's, studied Ross with quiet amusement. "You're early," she said smoothly, pouring herself a glass of wine. "I was hoping for a bit more suspense." Ross barely managed to keep her composure. "You're supposed to be dead." Emma smirked. "And yet, here we are." Hayes stiffened beside Ross, his grip tightening on his gun. "You faked your death." Emma took a slow sip before setting the glass down. "Not exactly." She gestured toward a chair. "Why don't we talk?" Ross didn't move. "Start explaining. Now." Emma let out a soft laugh. "Oh, detective. You're still thinking too small. You thought Richard Lane was the mastermind behind Sophie's murder? He was just the first pawn in a much bigger game." Ross clenched her fists. "You killed Sophie." Emma tilted her head. "Did I?" A beat of silence stretched between them. Then Emma reached into a drawer and tossed a folder onto the table. Ross opened it and felt the ground shift beneath her. Inside were surveillance images of multiple people. Richard Lane, the mysterious nurse, even Elena Foster, and at the very bottom, a grainy image of Sophie Lane. But the timestamp on the photo? It was taken a full hour after her reported time of death. Ross's stomach twisted. Emma leaned in, her voice a whisper. "You've been chasing shadows, detective. But now, you're finally starting to see the truth." Ross's breath caught in her throat. "Then tell me, who killed Sophie Lane?" Emma's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. Then, from somewhere inside the building, a gunshot rang out, and the room plunged into darkness. The gunshot cracked through the penthouse like a thunderclap. Detective Evelyn Ross dove for cover as the lights cut out, plunging the room into darkness. A second shot rang out, shattering glass. She heard Hayes curse somewhere to her right. "Hayes?" she called, pressing herself against the wall. "I'm good," he shouted back. "Emma?" Silence. Ross's pulse pounded. She reached for her flashlight, flicking it on, the beam slicing through the dark. The room was empty. Emma Carter was gone. A shattered window gaped open. Curtains whipping in the wind. Below, the street stretched into the city, a dizzying drop. Had she jumped? Escaped another way? Ross wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. Emma had vanished, just as suddenly as she had reappeared. And someone else was out there, pulling the trigger. A shadow moved. Ross spun, gun raised. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the emergency backup lights flickering on in the hallway. And then, in the dim glow, Ross saw something that made her blood turn to ice. The person wasn't aiming a gun at her. They were holding a phone, recording. The figure stepped forward, revealing their face. A man mid-30s, lean, with sharp, watchful eyes. He wore dark clothes, tactical but nondescript, and his grip on the phone was firm. He wasn't here to kill. He was here to document. "Who the hell are you?" Ross demanded, gun steady. The man smiled faintly. "I could ask you the same thing, detective, but we both know you're not the one with the answers." "Where's Emma?" The man glanced at the broken window, but didn't answer. Instead, he turned the phone toward her. The screen played a live feed. Ross's breath hitched. The video was grainy but clear. A dark, empty room. A chair in the center. And tied to it, Adam Carter. Blood ran down his temple. His hands were bound. His head lolled forward, his body limp but breathing. Ross's stomach twisted. "Where is he?" she demanded. The man tapped the screen. "You want to save him? Then listen carefully." Ross's grip on the gun tightened. "You're asking the wrong questions," the man continued. "Emma isn't the villain you think she is. She's trying to finish what started 5 years ago." Ross's pulse hammered her ears. "Finish what?" The man smiled again, dark amusement flickering across his face. "The truth about Sophie Lane's murder." And with that, he turned and disappeared into the hallway, his footsteps fading before Ross could react. By the time she reached the corridor, he was gone. Ross and Hayes sat in the precinct, poring over every detail they had on Emma, Adam, and Sophie Lane. The case was spiraling into something far bigger than a single murder. "I don't buy it," Hayes muttered, rubbing his temples. "Emma faked her death. She's involved in this somehow." Ross shook her head. "Then why would she lead us here? Why let us get this close?" The pieces weren't fitting. Richard Lane had covered up Emma's case 5 years ago. But why? And what did Sophie Lane's murder have to do with it? Ross pulled up the surveillance photo of Sophie, the one taken an hour after she was supposedly dead. What if Sophie Lane was never meant to die that night? What if the real crime had started before prom night? She clicked on another file, Sophie's autopsy report. A minor detail had stuck with her. No defensive wounds. No struggle. No sign of a typical attack. Instead, there was something else. A high dose of the same sedative found in Emma Carter's case. Ross's blood ran cold. Sophie Lane wasn't murdered in the woods. She was drugged first. And then, someone had staged a crime scene, which meant the real killer was still out there. And worse, Emma Carter knew exactly who it was. The phone pinged at exactly midnight. A single message, round pushpin location attached. Ross grabbed her gun and bolted. The GPS led her to an abandoned industrial site on the city's outskirts. It was the same location tied to the van used in Elena's kidnapping. Ross pulled up near the entrance, headlights off. The air was thick with tension. She could hear faint movement inside. Hayes was right behind her, gun raised. "You sure about this?" "No." She exhaled. "Let's go." They moved through the warehouse carefully, boots crunching over broken glass. Then, a sound, a low, pained groan. Ross sprinted toward it. In the center of the room was Adam Carter, tied to a chair just like in the video. Blood dripped from his face. His breathing was shallow. Ross knelt beside him. "Adam, hey, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open. Then a new sound. Footsteps. Ross and Hayes spun, guns drawn. And stepping out of the shadows was Emma Carter. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, held at gunpoint, Richard Lane. Ross's mind raced. Emma was supposed to be the villain, the mastermind. But now, she was the one holding Richard Lane captive. She looked different. Harder. Her eyes weren't filled with malice. They were filled with something far more dangerous. Conviction. She tossed a folder onto the ground. "Open it." Ross hesitated before picking it up. Inside were dozens of documents. Police reports, financial statements, autopsy records, and then, at the very bottom, a confession. Ross skimmed the words, her heart hammering. It was Richard Lane's. His signature was at the bottom, and it confirmed everything. Sophie Lane had found out the truth about her father. The money laundering, the cover-ups, the fabricated police reports, and she had threatened to expose him. So he did the only thing he could to protect himself. He drugged her, but something had gone wrong. The dosage had been too high. Sophie was never meant to die that night. Richard called in favors, staged the scene, and pinned it all on Adam Carter. Ross's hands shook as she looked up at him. "You set him up." Richard's jaw clenched. Emma stepped forward. "My death was a lie. But this," she gestured to the confession, "this is the real crime. And now, the whole world is going to know." Ross turned to Richard. His face was pale, sweat beading on his brow. "Say something," she demanded. And then, the power went out. A metallic clink echoed through the warehouse. A countdown started, and Ross realized too late. There was a bomb. The countdown had begun. Ross's stomach lurched. The eerie glow of the timer illuminated the warehouse floor. 00:10, 00:09, 00:08. "G.O.!" she shouted, grabbing Adam Carter by the arm, hauling him up. Hayes had already lunged for Richard Lane, dragging him toward the exit. Emma Carter stood frozen, staring at the bomb. "Emma, move!" Ross yelled. Emma's eyes flicked up, something dark in them, not fear, but resolve. Then she turned and sprinted. The explosion ripped through the warehouse just as they cleared the door. The force sent them flying, fire and debris swallowing the night. Ross hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her ribs. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, ringing, screams, the crackle of flames. Ross coughed, rolling onto her side. The heat from explosion pressed against her back, through the haze of smoke and debris. She saw Hayes groaning, pulling himself up. Adam Carter was slumped nearby, blood dripping from a fresh gash on his forehead. But Emma, gone. And Richard Lane? Ross's breath caught. He lay motionless a few feet away, dead. And someone was standing over him, a figure, cloaked in shadows, watching. Then they turned and vanished into the darkness. Ross sat on the edge of her desk, ice pack pressed to her bruised ribs, staring at the new case file in front of her. The explosion had destroyed everything. No confession, no evidence, no Emma Carter, Richard Lane dead. She was back in the wind, a ghost that had come and gone, but not before turning the case upside down. Across the room, Hayes was flipping through an old police report, frustration creasing his face. "This doesn't add up," he muttered. Emma had proof. She had it all laid out. Why go through the trouble of exposing Richard Lane, only to kill him and disappear? Ross exhaled, tossing the ice pack aside, because she wasn't done yet. Hayes looked at her. Think about it, Ross continued. Emma didn't just fake her death. She planned all of this. She wanted us to get involved, to dig into Sophie's murder, to expose her father's crimes. She tapped the file, but then she leaves? It doesn't make sense. Hayes hesitated. Unless... Ross nodded, finishing his thought. Unless Richard Lane wasn't the real target. The weight of that realization settled between them. They had been playing Emma's game, and she wasn't finished yet. Ross and Hayes drove across town, heading toward the hospital where Adam Carter was being treated. They needed answers. He was the only one left who might have them. The room was dimly lit when they entered. Adam sat on the edge of his hospital bed, fresh bandages wrapped around his forehead, his posture tense. Did you find her? His voice was hoarse, exhausted. Ross shook her head. Not yet. Adam exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. She saved my life, he muttered. Twice now. Hayes pulled up a chair. Tell us the truth, Adam. What really happened the night Sophie died? Adam hesitated. Then finally he spoke. That night, it wasn't supposed to happen like that, he whispered. His voice wavered. Sophie, she wasn't supposed to die. We were supposed to run. Ross's breath caught. Run. Hayes frowned. Run from who? Adam's jaw clenched. Richard Lane. And someone else. He swallowed hard. Sophie found out something she wasn't supposed to. She told me she had proof about someone bigger than her father. Someone pulling the strings. She was scared. We were supposed to meet that night and disappear before they could stop her. Ross's stomach twisted. This was it. The missing piece. Who, Adam? She pressed. Who was Sophie afraid of? Adam shook his head. I don't know, he admitted. She never told me. She just said, they'll kill me if they know I found out the truth. Ross and Hayes exchanged a look. This was bigger than Richard Lane. And Emma Carter knew exactly who they were after. The moment they stepped out of the hospital, Ross's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. A familiar voice whispered through the speaker. Detective Ross. You're running out of time. Ross's grip tightened. Emma? Static. Then a location ping. Round pushpin coordinates attached. Come alone, Emma's voice warned, or you'll never find the truth. The line went dead. Ross's pulse spiked. Hayes raised a brow. Let me guess, another trap? Ross smirked, slipping her gun into her holster. Probably. She opened the location link, and the blood drained from her face. The coordinates led to Sophie Lane's grave. Midnight. The cemetery was silent. The wind carried a faint whisper through the trees as Ross walked towards Sophie Lane's tombstone. The grass was freshly disturbed. And then she saw it, a shovel, sticking out of the dirt. Ross's pulse pounded. Her fingers itched toward her gun as she scanned the darkness. A figure stepped into the moonlight. Emma Carter. She stood beside Sophie's grave, her expression unreadable. Detective, she murmured. You came. Ross's fingers tightened around her gun. What the hell is this? Emma exhaled, her gaze flicking toward the disturbed earth. I needed you to see it for yourself. Ross's blood ran cold. See what? Emma hesitated. Then she knelt down and pulled something from the dirt. Ross's breath caught. It wasn't bones. It wasn't Sophie's remains. It was a second headstone, and the name carved into it sent ice through Ross's veins. Emma Carter. Ross stumbled back. What the hell is this? Emma's lips curled into a chilling smile. It's proof, she whispered. Ross's vision blurred. None of this made sense. Why would Emma's grave be here? Why now? Then a soft beep. Ross barely had time to react before something clicked in Emma's hand. A small, blinking device. Another bomb. Emma's eyes gleamed in the darkness. You were never chasing me, detective, she murmured. You were chasing a ghost. Ross lunged, but it was too late. A deafening explosion erupted behind her, the ground caving beneath her feet. She fell into darkness. The ground collapsed beneath her. Ross tumbled hard, the explosion sending her sprawling into the darkness below. Dirt, debris, silence. Her ears rang. Her lungs burned. Was she alive? Pain throbbed through her skull as she pushed herself up, her fingers sinking into cold earth. Dust settled around her, revealing the reality of her situation. She had fallen into a grave. Sophie Lane's grave. A deep, gaping hole that stretched beneath the tombstone, revealing something far worse than Ross had imagined. The coffin. But it was empty. A mockery. A lie. Detective Ross. A voice called softly from above. Ross's heart stopped. Emma Carter stood at the edge of the grave, looking down at her, calm, cold, unshaken. "You weren't supposed to see this," Emma murmured. Ross's breath hitched. The implications raced through her mind. If Sophie's body wasn't here, then where the hell was she? Why? Ross's voice was hoarse. Why go through all this? Why fake your death? Why bring me here? Emma tilted her head. Because you needed to know the truth. She tossed something down into the grave. A photo. Ross picked it up, hand shaking. And then her blood turned to ice. The ultimate betrayal. It was Sophie, alive, standing beside Richard Lane. Ross's mind reeled. No, this can't be. Oh, but it is. Emma crouched at the grave's edge, her expression unreadable. Sophie never died that night. She planned it. Ross's hands clenched around the photo. This had to be a trick. But deep down, something inside her knew it was true. The night of prom, Emma continued, Sophie didn't run from her father. She ran with him. Ross shook her head, refusing to believe it. Why the hell would she do that? Emma exhaled, because she was never the victim in this story. The words cut deep. You investigated Richard Lane for years, Emma murmured. You dug up the dirt, the corruption, the money laundering. But what you didn't see, what none of us saw, was that he wasn't working alone. Ross's pulse hammered. You're telling me Sophie was involved? Emma's lips curled slightly. I'm telling you she was in control. Ross clawed at the dirt wall, pulling herself out of the grave. That doesn't make sense, she snapped. Sophie was an innocent girl. She was loved. Emma's eyes darkened. She played you, detective. Ross froze. Emma stepped closer, her voice dropping lower. The innocent girl in the blue prom dress? That was a role, a performance. She reached into her pocket, tossing another object at Ross's feet. A second photograph. Sophie, standing beside a different man this time. A man Ross recognized instantly. Elijah Carter, Emma's father. And suddenly, everything clicked. Ross's breath hitched. No. Oh, yes, Emma whispered. Sophie wasn't afraid of Richard Lane. She wasn't running from him. She was taking over from him. Ross's head spun. Her own father wasn't on it? Emma let out a bitter laugh. Richard Lane was powerful, but he was sloppy. People were starting to dig too deep. So Sophie made a choice. She sold him out, took over his operation. And when things got too risky, she staged a perfect murder. Ross's stomach twisted. She killed her own father? Emma shook her head. No, detective. I did. Silence hung between them. You killed him, Ross whispered. Emma's expression hardened. I had to. Her voice was cold now, calculated. I knew what Sophie was. I figured out too late. When I confronted her, she smiled and told me I had two options. Join her or die. Ross could barely breathe. I refused, Emma continued. I tried to run, but Sophie doesn't let loose ends live. So she made sure the world thought I was dead. That's what that fire was for. Ross remembered. The fire that supposedly killed Emma years ago. The body they pulled from the wreckage had been burned beyond recognition. They assumed it was her. I barely escaped, Emma admitted. But I made her think I was gone. And then I started watching, waiting. I needed proof. And when I found it, I knew I couldn't take her down alone. Her eyes met Ross's. So I brought you into the game. Ross staggered back. So this whole thing, bringing me in, exposing Richard Lane, the bomb, the warehouse, it was all a distraction? Emma's lips curled. I needed you to do what I couldn't. Bring everything into the light. Ross's mind raced. Sophie Lane had orchestrated the perfect crime. Her father took the fall. Emma was silenced, and no one had ever suspected the smiling girl in the prom dress. Until now. But where is she? Ross demanded. Where is Sophie now? Emma exhaled slowly. She's here. Ross froze. She never left, Emma murmured. She's been watching the whole time, waiting to see if we figured it out. And now, Emma reached into her jacket, pulling out a gun. Ross's heart stopped. Emma, she'll be coming for us. Emma cut in, and we only get one shot. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Ross reached for her gun, but it was too late. A voice drifted through the trees. Soft, sweet, familiar. You should have stayed dead, Emma. Ross turned and locked eyes with Sophie Lane. Alive, smiling, holding a gun. The final piece of the puzzle. And then a single gunshot.